On my wedding day, my fiancé's mother called my plans cheap and said I wasn't ready to be a wife. My fiancé stood there in silence. They had no idea what I'd do next. They told me weddings bring families together, but in my case, it feels like mine is being torn apart before I even walk down the aisle. From the moment Michael slipped the ring on my finger, I pictured a celebration that felt like me, warm, free, and full of life. I never wanted a ballroom with chandeliers or a stiff three-course dinner. I wanted something real, something that would make people laugh, eat until they were full, and dance under the stars without worrying about etiquette. That's why I fell in love with the idea of food trucks, gourmet tacos sizzling on the grill, barbecue drifting through the air, a dessert truck handing out soft serve to kids with sticky fingers, and adults who'd secretly line up twice. Michael was on board, my mom loved it, and for once I thought this wedding was going to be exactly what I had always imagined. But then came Susan, Michael's mother. When she offered to pay for the catering, I thought it was generosity, but it turned out to be control disguised as kindness. The moment I mentioned food trucks, her lips pressed into a tight line, and she said one word that still rings in my head: tacky. She didn't stop there, she called it cheap, embarrassing, and not the image her family should present. And suddenly it wasn't about me or Michael anymore, it was about her reputation, her standards, her idea of what was proper. Now she's parading binders of catering menus in front of me, 5-course dinners with champagne towers and waiters in bow ties, insisting that this is what a wedding should look like. And every time I try to argue, Michael shifts uncomfortably, caught between the woman he loves and the mother who raised him. I thought this day was supposed to be mine, but with every passing week, it feels like Susan is rewriting it piece by piece. At first, I tried to brush it off, telling myself that maybe Susan just needed time to warm up to the idea. But soon it wasn't just about the food anymore. It was the flowers, the music, even the dress. I'll never forget the day she showed up at my apartment with 3 glossy bridal magazines and said in the sweetest voice she could muster, "Darling, I think we should reconsider lace. Satin is more elegant, don't you agree?" It wasn't a question, it was an order hidden in politeness. Michael kept telling me, "Just let her have this, it's easier." But every time I swallowed my words, I felt a piece of myself disappear. I wasn't planning a wedding anymore, I was fighting for ownership of my own day. The worst part was how subtle she was with everyone else. To Michael's family, she was just a loving mother eager to help, generous enough to pay for catering and flowers, supportive enough to guide me through the process. But behind closed doors, she'd lean closer and whisper lines that cut deeper than any outright insult. "People will talk if you do it your way," or, "Do you really want Michael's colleagues to think you don't know how to host?" Each word was like a needle under my skin, and the more she spoke, the more I wondered if this wedding was even mine anymore. I dreamt of walking down the aisle with joy in my chest, but now, every time I looked at my calendar, I felt dread. Then came the rehearsal dinner planning. I suggested something small and casual. A backyard gathering with fairy lights and comfort food, something intimate that felt like home. Susan shut it down instantly. "Rehearsals are for presentation, not play," she said, and booked a country club without even asking me. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed staring at the invitation mock-ups she sent. My name was there, printed in gold, but it didn't even feel like me. It felt like Susan had already claimed my wedding, and I was just a guest. And the closer we got to the wedding day, the more I realized something had to give. It started small, little disagreements that could have been brushed off if you didn't know Susan's pattern. My mom suggested daisies for the centerpieces, because she remembered how I used to pick them from the fields when I was a little girl. Simple, meaningful, beautiful. But Susan wrinkled her nose and said, "Daisies? Those are weeds. We'll do orchids, much more appropriate." I tried to laugh it off, but I caught the look on my mom's face. She went quiet, the kind of quiet that says everything. My mom had been respectful, careful not to step on Susan's toes, but that silence told me she felt pushed aside too. Then came the bridal shower. My sister wanted to host it, she was excited, she had ideas, even started making little decorations by hand. But Susan swooped in and took over, insisting it should be held at a proper venue. Within a week, she had booked a hotel ballroom, ordered catering, and sent out invitations without telling anyone. My sister found out when a cousin forwarded her the invite. She came to me in tears, asking why Susan was allowed to erase her plans. I didn't have an answer. By the time we hit the rehearsal dinner, things exploded. My mom had been holding it together for weeks, biting her tongue, but when Susan announced she'd changed the seating chart, moving my father and mother to the back of the room because important guests need to be at the front. That was it. My mom slammed her hand on the table and said, "This isn't your wedding, Susan. You're not marrying my daughter. If you can't respect her choices, maybe you shouldn't be here at all." The room went dead silent. Susan's eyes narrowed, her smile stretched tight like glass about to shatter, and for the first time I saw her drop the mask. She wasn't the helpful, generous mother-in-law anymore. She was a woman who believed she owned this wedding, and now she'd been challenged. And in that silence, I realized this wasn't just about food trucks or flowers anymore. It was a full-blown war for control, and the battlefield was my wedding. The morning of my wedding should have been calm, filled with laughter and excitement, but instead, there was a storm brewing in every corner of the venue. From the moment I arrived, the flowers were wrong. Orchids lined the aisle, towering and dramatic, not the daisies I'd chosen. The seating chart had been rearranged again, pushing my mom and sister further back, and when I walked past the reception area, I froze. The food trucks, my food trucks, were nowhere in sight. In their place, tables were being set with silverware, wine glasses, and covered dishes. A formal plated dinner. Exactly what Susan wanted. I felt my chest tighten as the reality sank in. She had done it. She had actually gone behind my back and erased everything I had fought for. My mom noticed immediately. She marched straight to the catering staff, demanding answers, and when they nervously admitted that Susan had called that morning to cancel the trucks and replace them with her preferred setup, my mom exploded. Her voice carried across the entire room. "You had no right. This is not your wedding, and you will not ruin my daughter's day." Guests turned their heads, whispers rippled through the air, and then Susan swept into the room like a queen entering her throne. Calm, collected, but with fire in her eyes, she looked right at me and said, "I told you people would laugh at you. I fixed it before you embarrassed yourself." That was it. The moment everything cracked, my mom lunged forward, my sister joined in, and soon it was a shouting match in the middle of the venue. Susan's relatives tried to calm her, my bridesmaids tried to pull my mom back, but the damage was already done. The illusion of peace was shattered, and the battle lines were drawn right there, minutes before I was supposed to walk down the aisle. And in the middle of it all, I stood frozen in my dress, watching my wedding spiral into chaos, realizing I had one final choice to make. The shouting had reached a fever pitch. My mother's voice shook with rage, my sister was practically in tears, and Susan stood there with her chin high, daring me to side with her. For a split second, I could hear the gasps of guests, the whispers, the sound of silverware clattering on tables as people tried to figure out if this was real or some cruel joke. And then something inside me snapped. I walked forward, heels echoing against the floor, and for the first time in my life, everyone went silent. My hands were trembling, but my voice came out clear, sharp, and stronger than I'd ever heard it. "Enough." Every head turned. Susan smirked, certain I was about to defend her. My mom wiped a tear from her cheek, waiting to hear if I'd abandon her too. And then I said the words that silenced even my own doubts. "This was never your wedding to control, Susan. You didn't just cancel the food trucks. You tried to erase me. My choices, my voice, my family. And I won't stand at the altar today pretending that's love." Gasps rippled through the room. Susan's smile faltered, her confidence cracking for the first time. She whispered, "You don't mean that." But I cut her off. "What I don't mean is saying, 'I do,' to someone who doesn't respect me. This wedding is over." The room erupted. Half the guests stood in shock, the other half cheered. My mother rushed to my side, holding me as though she'd been waiting years to hear me finally choose myself. Susan's family scrambled to pull her away as she screamed that I'd regret this, but I felt nothing but relief, like chains breaking off my chest. And then, as the chaos swirled, with guests pulling out their phones, whispers filling the hall, I turned, lifted my head high in my ruined dress, and walked out of my own wedding with the only people who truly loved me walking right beside me. As my words echoed through the hall, I could feel Susan's eyes burning into me, but what struck me harder was the look on Michael's face. My fiancé, the man who had sworn to love me, stood frozen at the altar, his jaw tight, his eyes darting between me and Susan as though he'd just been caught in a storm he never expected. For a second he opened his mouth and I thought he might defend me, fight for me, prove that I hadn't just wasted years of my life on someone spineless. But instead, his silence screamed louder than anything. Finally, he said, his voice low but sharp, "You're humiliating us." Humiliating. I shot back, my heart pounding. No, Michael. The real humiliation is standing here looking at the man I was supposed to marry, a man too weak to defend me, and expect me to smile for the cameras. Gasps broke out again. Susan tugged at his arm, whispering something I couldn't hear, and he didn't pull away. That was the moment. That was the knife. He wasn't mine. He never was. His eyes hardened as he said, "If you walk away now, don't expect me to follow." I laughed. A bitter, broken sound that surprised even me. "I'm not asking you to follow. I'm asking you to finally show me who you really are. And I've got my answer." The silence stretched, and every second felt like a dagger twisting in my chest. Michael didn't deny, he didn't comfort, he didn't fight for me. He just stood there, pale, nervous, like a man too afraid to upset anyone, even on the day he was supposed to promise me forever. His voice finally broke through the whispers in the room, trembling but cold. "This isn't the time or place. You're making a scene." A scene. That's all our years together meant to him. A scene, a show, a performance where I was expected to play the perfect bride while Susan smirked at my pain. I stared at him, and in that instant I saw the truth. Michael wasn't my partner. He was a man who only looked strong in silence. A man who hid behind politeness while letting others crush me. A man who would rather let me bleed than risk offending Susan. He reached out as if to take my hand, but I pulled it back. His fingers hung useless in the air, trembling. He couldn't even hold on to me without permission, couldn't even say my name with conviction. I lifted my voice, steady, clear, breaking through the tension. "If you can't defend me today in front of the whole world, then you were never meant to be my husband." His face fell, the color draining out, but he didn't step forward, didn't shout, didn't fight. He just stood there, weak and quiet, watching the life we'd planned slip away because he didn't have the courage to choose me. The room went still, but Susan, she thrived in the silence. She stepped forward in her gleaming dress, her smile stretching wider, sharp as broken glass. "There it is," she purred, her voice carrying through the stunned crowd. "The real her, loud, dramatic, unfit. I told you all she wasn't ready to be a wife. And Michael," she tilted her head at him, her eyes glittering with cruel satisfaction, "you've always known who should be standing beside you." Gasps rippled through the hall. My heart slammed against my chest, but I held my ground. Michael lowered his eyes, weak, his silence screaming louder than words. He didn't deny her. He didn't defend me. He let Susan's poison fill the air, as if agreeing by saying nothing at all. Susan took another step closer, her perfume cloying, her hand brushing Michael's arm like she owned it. "You deserve better than her, and now everyone sees it. Why waste your life on someone who will only drag you down?" The crowd shifted uncomfortably, whispers rising, but Susan stood tall, her words cutting me in front of family, friends, everyone, daring me to break. Susan's lips curled into a smirk as she circled me slowly, her heels clicking against the marble floor like a countdown. She wasn't just trying to embarrass me, she was staging her victory. "You all see it now, don't you?" she said, sweeping her hand toward the guests, her voice dripping with venom. This woman wanted a circus for a wedding, food trucks and paper plates, no class, no dignity. And I tried to save Michael from this humiliation. I tried to give him a wedding worthy of his name. The whispers grew louder, nods of agreement flashing in the crowd. My chest tightened, but Susan wasn't done. She turned sharply to Michael, laying her hand on his chest as if claiming him. "But look at her, screaming, ruining the one day that should have been perfect. Is this really who you want raising your children, Michael? Someone who disrespects your family, your future?" Michael's lips parted, but nothing came out. He just stared at the floor, his silence cutting me more deeply than her words. Susan pressed on, sensing his weakness, her voice rising for everyone to hear. "She doesn't belong in this family. He never did. And now, in front of everyone, you can finally admit what I already know." The crowd leaned in, hungry for the collapse. Susan's eyes locked on mine, her smile ablaze. That she was a mistake. Susan's voice sharpened like glass, every word meant to slice me open. She couldn't even pay for her own dress without begging for help. She doesn't have the grace to host a proper wedding, and yet she thinks she's good enough to marry into this family. She let out a bitter laugh, her eyes darting to the guests as if daring them to disagree. I stood frozen, heat flooding my cheeks, my hands trembling at my sides. The air was thick, judgment weighing down like chains, and still Michael said nothing. He just kept staring at the ground like a man too weak to fight for the woman beside him. Susan circled closer, her perfume sickeningly sweet, her voice low but sharp enough to carry. Do you know what people really say about you? That you're dragging him down, that you're lucky he even looked at you. You'll never fit in here, and deep down you know it. I heard gasps ripple through the hall, and still Michael stood silent, spineless, shrinking into himself while his mother shredded me apart. Susan leaned in, her lips almost at my ear, her whisper venomous but loud enough for those closest to hear. Run now before you embarrass yourself further. Because after today, you'll only ever be remembered as the girl who wasn't enough. Her words echoed, the silence in Michael's defense screamed louder than any insult, and for the first time, something inside me snapped. My chest burned, my pulse thundered in my ears, and suddenly the weight of her words didn't crush me anymore. It lit something fierce inside me. I lifted my head slowly, my voice shaking at first but growing stronger with every word. Enough. The word cut through the hall like a blade, and for the first time Susan stopped mid-sneer. I turned to face her fully, my hands no longer trembling, my eyes locked on hers. You've humiliated me in front of everyone, you've treated me like I'm dirt under your shoes, and the man I was supposed to marry just stood there and let it happen. My voice rose, raw and steady. But I will not let you write the ending to my story. Not you. Not him. Not anyone. Gasps rippled through the room, but I didn't stop. I shifted, my gaze pinning Michael, his face pale, lips parted, still mute in his weakness. And you, how dare you call yourself my fiancé? You let your mother destroy me while you stood there like a coward. If this is the kind of man you are, then you don't deserve me, and I won't waste another breath defending what you couldn't even fight for. The hall erupted in whispers, guests exchanging shocked looks, some wide-eyed, others nodding silently as if they'd been waiting for this truth to explode. I tore off the ring from my finger and let it fall with a sharp clink onto the marble floor between us. My voice didn't shake this time. This wedding is over. I may walk out of here humiliated, but I will not walk out chained to a man too weak to stand by me. And for the first time the silence wasn't suffocating, it was mine. Weak love is dangerous love. A partner who won't stand up for you will leave you exposed to constant humiliation and pain. Self-respect is stronger than public shame. Walking away may feel humiliating in the moment, but it's the first step toward reclaiming your dignity. Family interference can destroy relationships. If a partner allows their family to disrespect you, it will only grow worse after marriage. A ruined wedding is far less painful than a ruined life. Better no marriage than a bad marriage. A cancelled wedding is painful, but a toxic marriage is a lifetime of pain. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories.